So when you measure all government debt in the United States, you're looking at 140%, 445% of GDP, but that's just the tip of the iceberg because it doesn't count any of the unfunded liabilities of the United States government. Those are commitments to pay things like Social Security or Medicare benefits or guaranteed student loans. And when you add all that together, you're talking about several hundred times the GDP of how much we've run up in debt. And the problem, contrary to what everybody is talking about, the problem isn't the debt ceiling. The problem is the debt. The problem is we keep raising the ceiling, so we keep on piling on more debt. The debt is a huge problem. It doesn't help capitalism. It interferes with capitalism because what happens is the government is taking resources away from the private sector and diverting them to public spending. And this undermines capitalism. It undermines savings and investment and all the things that we need to grow our standard of living. The problem is much of this debt now is being monetized by the central bank. The Federal Reserve prints money to buy up all this debt. And all that is levying a massive inflation tax on the economy. And this is only getting started. Prices are going to explode in the United States for all manner of consumer goods, especially goods relative to services, because the American economy, after years and years of deficits crowding out private investment, we are completely dependent on the productive capacity of the rest of the world. We are running record trade deficits. Just yesterday, we printed the largest monthly trade deficit in U.S. history, better than $73 billion. Those deficits are going to keep getting higher and higher. And eventually, and I think relatively soon, the value of our money, the dollar, is going to collapse. And all the prices of the imported goods are going to be going up much faster than they are right now. So the price of everything goes up as a result. And that increase in price, which we call inflation, which actually is the result of inflation, amounts to a tax. So the way the government taxes us, instead of taking our money, they take our purchasing power. So the result is the same. If I have, $10,000 and the government takes away $1,000 in taxes, now I can only buy $9,000 worth of stuff. Well, if they leave me with $10,000 and print a bunch of money, and now prices go up by 10%, and now I can buy less stuff, I buy 10% fewer goods because the price of everything went up 10%, I'm in exactly the same predicament had the government been honest and taken my money. Instead, they were dishonest and took my purchasing power because the money they printed, they gave it to somebody else. And somebody else spent that money, and they bought the products that I can no longer afford. Thriving middle class. We had an economy that really was the envy of the world. We built a standard of living that was unmatched anywhere else in the world. The problems really started when government started to grow and started to impose more regulations and more subsidies and more government spending, and the Federal Reserve came around. So these problems were not created by capitalism. They were created by government's interference with capitalism. And every time government tries to solve the problems that they create, they make those problems even worse. I mean, actually, say when it's going to start and describe how it's going to work. The process, how long it's going to take, how quickly, we're going to end QE, and what the increments will be for the taper. And in fact, the dollar had been rallying, gold stocks had been getting crushed because of, all this taper talk, because this was supposedly this tightening cycle. And I've been pointing out that tapering isn't even tightening. They're still doing QE. It's still easy money. They're just slightly, letting up on the accelerator. They're not stepping on the brake. So, it's more inflation being added into the mix. But when Powell actually delivered his speech, he didn't even use the word taper. He didn't even mention it. He only talked about the access purchases in one sentence of the entire speech. And all he said was that it could be appropriate to reduce the size of the asset purchase program this year. That's it. Could be appropriate. That doesn't mean that they're going to do it. I mean, first of all, if it could be appropriate, it might not be appropriate. So if it's not appropriate, they're not going to do it. And even if they decide it's appropriate, that doesn't mean they're going to do it. They can say, it's appropriate, but we're going to wait. I mean, saying it could be appropriate means absolutely nothing. So this entire speech was this gigantic nothing burger. It it didn't deliver on any of the hype. And gold did rally on it, about 25 bucks. Gold stocks were up, the dollar was down, but not nearly as much as it should, because these moves didn't come close to unwinding the moves that were made on anticipation